But I'd like to just let you know, those of you who have been joining us know that I usually start with meditation, which is followed by the service, the talk. This morning, I am going to start us off with the talk, and we will end with meditation. So if this is your first time, I welcome you to our service. My name is Reverend Angela Denton. And if you have been part of our community for a while, has been a steadfast participant, I am thrilled that you are here, that we are here together. And I'm also excited about going back to our series that we have begun a couple of weeks ago, entitled See No Stranger. And it is based on the work of Valerie Kaur, her book, See No Stranger, a memoir and a manifesto of revolutionary love. And so a couple of weeks ago, I shared with you that Valerie is not only an author, but a spiritual teacher. She has several degrees in divinity. She is also a civil rights lawyer and an activist, and she is a filmmaker. And in her book, See No Stranger, Valerie calls us into what she calls the practice of revolutionary love. And she shares that now more than ever, as we navigate our way through challenging times, through a pandemic, loss of all different kinds, where we see polarization at an all-time high, depression, anxiety, addiction, and even suicide is at an all-time high. And we see that just in this past month alone, there were 45 mass shootings across our nation. And so her call into revolutionary love is for us to understand love as more than a sentiment. In fact, she states that love is more than a sentiment or a feeling or a feel-good endorphin that we experience throughout our body. No, really, divine love is an act of labor that we are called into. Just as we labor for love in giving physical birth to our children and sacrifice for our loved ones when they are in need, we must labor in love for others, for our opponents, and for ourselves. And in her book, she has this compass, which she calls the Revolutionary Love Compass. And the book is divided into those three sections that I spoke about: how to be revolutionary and labor for our love for others, our opponents, and ourselves. A few weeks ago, we explored the section on being called to love others. And by others, we are asked to move from seeing that other people outside of our usual circle, especially those whose skin color, gender, sexual orientation, race, religion may be different than our own. And even those that we do, as we are shopping in the store, if we're at work, if we are, in our limited context that we do have, walking in the park, all those things that we can still love and do, that when we see someone we don't know, is to begin to wonder, to just make the statement, brother, sister, sibling, you are a part of me I do not yet know. And just by engaging that simple practice, we move from seeing people as separate, but the reminder that we are all one. And then we explored what it means to grieve with others and to fight. Sometimes we see that word and it doesn't sound so spiritual, but all of the work that Valerie presents in See No Stranger is a call of of nonviolent action of revolutionary love. And so when we talked about fight, we explored how to stand up in solidarity with those who are being mistreated, whose liberties, or who are being assaulted based on their gender, sexual orientation, their race, their creed, those who are suffering. And so when we stand up in solidarity, we are asked to use our own gifts and how we can serve others. And so today we get to move into the section entitled Being Called to Revolutionary Love, to labor for love for our opponents. And I'm going to speak what she means about opponents. But I want you to look that right under the words opponent, the word opponents is tend the wound. And she states that in order for us to be the revolutionary of love or in unity, how we can harmonize ourselves in the presence and power of our own love, meaning that I will stand in my divinity and I will act and behave and move and breathe and use my gifts from my highest place in consciousness, opposed to from my woundedness. Okay, it doesn't mean that I'm going to like or love everything that others do, but it means that I live from the inside out, just like we explored in Robert Brummett's book, Living Originally. So our first lesson that's up for today in this section is rage. But before we get to rage, I just want to bring some clarity about what we mean by opponents, okay? So an opponent is anybody that we have difficulty seeing eye to eye with. That could be someone in our own family, a coworker, someone who we seem to argue a lot with, someone who we may dislike and even have strong disdain, or should we even say hatred for. An opponent is also someone we see as that their behavior and actions, whether intentional or not intentional, not done on purpose, has somehow caused us to experience pain and suffering. And an opponent also can be someone we believe is against us. And somebody just simply sharing how they're feeling, what they're thinking, and what they're needing. Sometimes we can even take that personally, and then we make other people responsible for the emotions that are coming up for us and instead of taking ownership for them. So Valerie reminds us that in order for us to access our divinity at its highest, the power of love, the harmonizing power of love, and all of our spiritual powers that we talk about every Sunday, we must tend to the wound within. We must labor, do the inner work. That's what labor means, is to take action, to do the inner work, to clear out all that stands in the way and all that we give our energy to that is disempowering to. So the first thing that she speaks about is asking us to step into what it means to rage. So I want you to take a deep breath, because some people, here we are, a spiritual community. Is rage really spiritual? And so we're going to look at that. Everything we experience, our body, our emotions, our minds, our spiritual eternal self, everything is of the breath of God, the invisible substance of God. And so, yes, everything is divine. Now, how we use our body temple, how we speak, how we show up in the world may not be in alignment with that. So let us take a look at, what does Valerie mean to rage? It is to express our body's most fiery energy. I'm going to repeat that. It is to express our body's most fiery energy. It is to tap into our body's power to protect ourselves and others. And again, she calls for nonviolence. And the aim of divine rage is not vengeance. The aim of divine rage is to harness the energy of our rage for creative, empowered action in the world. Now, if we look at that statement, any emotion, whether it's rage, it's sadness, joy, beauty, any of the emotions that come up, any thoughts, when we can be the observer of our thoughts and our emotions, take a deep breath, and then choose what we will do with it. That is when we are being the master, claiming our power of dominion. So I want us to take a look at two words that sometimes maybe we wouldn't think goes together: divine and rage. And we don't see those together because usually in our religious upbringing and even in our spiritual circles, it's really not discussed pretty often. And throughout many spiritual texts, there are examples of this. The most common, if you have roots in Christianity of some sort, is when Jesus flips the tables in the temple when he observes the poor class, the disadvantaged, being pretty much ripped off right in the temple. Money being taken from them, the little money that they have. And then there is the Black Madonna, which is the symbol of calling us into our shadow selves. That is which is hidden, all that we think is not spiritual. And then in the Hindu faith, we have the Hindu goddess Kali, who is both feared and loved for her protection of the people. She is a symbol of the divine mother. And then Valerie explains further, love is a labor that engages all of our emotions. Joy is the gift of love. When we are centered in our love, truly from the highest, we experience the joy of our being. And grief is the price of love. When we are willing to open our hearts to all of life, of all relationships, whether it's our four-legged friends, two-legged friends, our family, our friends, when we say yes to opening our hearts and letting in, and when we have an ending of a relationship, either through death or moving away, we feel that grief of that physical loss in our humanness. And then we look at anger. Anger is the force that summons that somewhere we are feeling that we are not safe, that protects that which is loved. You see, we cannot accept the depth of our loving ourselves or others without being able to access our rage. So I just want to read that one more time. Love is a labor that engages all of our emotions. Joy is the gift of love. Grief is the price of love. Anger is the force that protects that which is loved. You see, we cannot access the depth of loving ourselves or others without being able to access our rage and all of our emotions. So not only do we not explore certain emotions like rage or anger or jealousy in spiritual circles, but usually societal and cultural and familiar norms, is also, we're taught to avoid it. And we kind of are taught unhealthy ways. So again, we see it, anger and rage is not spiritual. And, in most of our society today, it is acceptable. Men are powerful, especially white men are powerful if they are angry. And so we say that's okay. But let a black man show some passion and some anger, and right away we see them as dangerous, as a threat, someone that we need to shoot down and kill, which is right before our eyes. And then we move into women. It's not polite. It's not ladylike. And women who express any form of anger can be coined a bitch, quote unquote. And then if you are a Black woman, it is doubly difficult. I can't begin to tell you in how many classes I've had where a woman of color will share how they have suppressed their anger or their rage because they did not want to be seen as a threat, as an angry Black woman. And that just saddens my heart. And so we must be called to move from healthy exploring of all of our emotions, but especially of our anger and our rage. Because right now, the two choices that we usually go to, unless you've been practicing this and allowing, which I know many of you here do, is that we either suppress or explode. You know, those people who try to keep everybody in line, or, you know, just on a dime can just kind of verbally vomit all over you, or lose their patience and temper so quickly. And those, like the song says, suppress and suffer in silence. But knowing that everything is there and is divine, and as we become the observer, we can allow our rage and anything in our lives to be alchemicalized into empowered, loving action. And Valerie says that there are three things we must, you know, she gives us guidelines. So there's three steps. One, we must find safe containers for all of our feelings, but especially for anger and rage. Then we must be willing to go within to feel it and see what wisdom, what is the anger and the rage here trying to tell us, which I'll speak to a little bit later. And then how can it be a call of action to use what I'm most fiery about, most passionate about, to be a force of benevolence and good in this world? So let us look at safe containers. And here's what she means by safe container. Is allowing our rage to be expressed without it hurting or disempowering ourselves or others. I'm going to say that again. Doesn't mean, because when we see containers, it's like you almost want to think like you got to push it somewhere, right? What she's referring here, I'm going to say it again, is allowing our rage to be expressed without it hurting or disempowering ourselves or others. Okay, now we're not responsible for others, but we do know when we're showing up and we're screaming at people and are not kind, right? So that's what we can own. In fields, people in the fields of psychology and science also state that anything that either explodes or is trapped in emotions is associated with trauma. And when we have trapped trauma or stress in our body, it causes disease of body, mind, emotion, and it suppresses our spiritual essence. In the body, we see suppression of so many emotions, but with rage and anger could come in the form of heart disease, of migraines, of arthritis, irritable bowel syndrome, right? Or we may be in this heightened state of alert where we don't trust anyone or anything, or fear everything. And so we are engaged in patterns of maybe obsessive fear, anxiety, obsessing thinking, and behavioral patterns that we have to engage in that are maybe disempowering for ourselves. And most of all, when we have anything that is not healed, that keeps us in our woundedness in any way, it keeps us from living from our wisest, most loving, empowered, and creative selves. So I'm going to share a video with you. And it is something I asked Matt to splice together. It is a video of a polar bear who was shot with a tranquilizer. Now, the scientists were trying to study the white polar bear because of climate change and other things. So they weren't, there to kill them. So I know, even so, I know that it still bothers me. I'm just giving you a heads up. But it shows the modeling of a safe container, how to allow the discharge of trauma in our body. And then there is a group of students from New Zealand that engage in an Aboriginal war dance after the mass shooting that occurred in Christchurch Mosque in 2019. And then we'll speak about it on the other side. And hopefully by then I could figure out my slides.
Looks like a fatty. We'll go for that one, Dennis. Yeah, oh yeah, just perfect. He's absolutely perfect. He decides to get a bit bigger neck and so on. Yes. Holy snapper. If you watch that animal after he finishes convulsing, you'll see, because he's aware of the fact that we're all around him, and it's a very stressful experience for an animal like a polar bear. And after he settles down, and then he'll start doing a couple of deep breaths, and then he'll breathe really nicely, and it'll really... Now look, here he goes. See how he's breathing there now? You can see, so that even though it looks a little unpleasant to look at him convulsing like that, in fact, it lets off all that stress, and he then is able to relax and sleep the thing off.
So here we see the polar bear innately using the wisdom of the body to release, to shake the trauma from from itself. And there we see the New Zealand students doing an Aboriginal dance to, these are both models of safe containers, expression of our anger and rage instead of imploding or exploding. Instead of maybe burning down buildings or crashing cars and doing other acts, all because of the rage. There's nothing, I mean, having our brothers, sisters, siblings killed while they are spiritually worshiping, and races of people who've experienced across centuries harshness, slavery, and brutality, and seeing Black men as a threat, that anger and rage can be ancestral. And we all have even our own family dynamics of things where we have experienced pain and suffering. And so the bear and the New Zealand students model what Indigenous people and practices have taught for years and centuries that go back and back, shaking, whirling, the whirling dervishes for altered states, weeping and mourning, purposely having ceremonies that engage music for people to mourn and to allow the healthy release using sound, facial expressions. You know, watching the students' facial expression, you can see the emotion, the fiery emotion of anger and rage on their face, right? And when we see that, it might frighten us. Just like, you know, when we see the bear convulsing, thinking something's wrong, well, you know, nobody wants to get shot. And so that's a whole nother story, whether it's for science or not, but that's a whole nother story. But even when my son had his first seizure, and I'm happy to report that he hasn't had one for a year and a half, but he was with my husband. And so his body was doing, you know, they say not to try to hold down. And my ex-husband didn't know that. So he got some injuries because the body was trying to do what it was needing to do. There's singing, there's chanting and sound, as I said, there's dancing and ritual ceremonies. Those are safe ways to allow the rage and anger to be expressed without hurting ourselves or disempowering ourselves or another. So I want to take a look at this trauma word. And what trauma is. Sometimes we think like, oh, if I haven't been a war vet, or if I haven't, you know, been mugged, well, maybe then I don't have this trauma. So trauma refers to anything that's trapped or unprocessed, any stress that's trapped or unprocessed. And when it is the ability of our complex and dynamic autonomous nervous system to recover to normal functioning. Usually when we experience rage or anger, it is associated with a perceived or real threat to one's safety or freedom or a way of living or rights. And it also can be associated when rage and anger come up in us. We feel that something is being annihilated within us. Our own identity, you know, verbal abuse, not being seen as equal, as right, enough, so on and so on. And so there are current day somatic therapies, you know, the indigenous cultures had the wisdom and would engage what I had just shared with you, but there are current day somatic therapies that are very powerful. You know, yes, prayer, meditation is powerful, but knowing the wisdom of our bodies as well and honoring all levels. So Peter Levine actually, you know, was watching a documentary and he actually saw this polar bear film. And that's where he was like, oh my gosh, look at the wisdom of the polar bear. So Peter Levine has a wealth of material that has to do with somatic therapies of releasing trauma, you know, associated with rage, anger, or anything else. And many of you know already about tapping. Kristen Ferraro has been a guest speaker. She has taught classes at Unity, and some of you already follow her. And so that is another resource. I've only given a little bit of heart math, breathing, having heart-mind coherence, but there's a whole exploration there. At one point in my life, I experienced Rubenfeld synergy method when I had still was responding, feeling unsafe when I was really safe due to an assault I had years ago. And I found that to be powerful. And then there is our very own Karen Walling, who is a best practitioner, bio-emotional synchronistic technique. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you could reach out to Karen. And there is sound, chanting, and movement. You know, Vicki Mates does healing and expressing through movement. That's what let your yoga dance. And I'm sure maybe there could be something that she can create that we can at some point explore the release of anger and rage. And there is something called reliving and reimagining. And Valerie shares this in her book, where a somatic therapist, who is a college friend of hers, helped her. 20 years ago, she had a license to report on a protest that was occurring in New York City. It was a protest against the Iraq War. And again, she was assigned to go document that. And while she was there, she began taking pictures. And as soon as she started taking pictures with her camera, a policeman came, pushed her to the ground, and then put handcuffs on her. And before she knew it, she was being hauled off in a van where she was shoved, pushed. She remembers all the sights, the smells, and she was taken to a place where they call the Guantanamo Bay of the Hudson. And she said that when she got to the, to the station, she just asked the one lieutenant, hey, my hands are in pain. The cuffs are too tight. Can you just loosen them a bit? And with that, the lieutenant screams in her face, takes her arms and holds them real tight and then tightens the handcuffs. And she said the pain was so excruciating and she wanted to yell, but she couldn't. And so this was suppressed. And for many years, if she saw certain men, especially white men, people of uniform, she would go into this somatic response. So and she also knew it was standing in her way of having enemies, so to speak. So she called on her friend and he took her back into a meditative state where she got to recreate the story. And he asked her to transform into something that was powerful and beautiful, that could, to stand up, to protect herself. And so she called up herself as a tiger, and she envisioned herself tearing this lieutenant to shreds and eating him. And then what that represented, not that it was about killing him, but it was about the shredding and tearing up of all that was holding her stuck in that pattern of unexpressed pain and suffering and trauma. And from that day forward, she said that she felt free and she could feel herself having that compassion return to her. So we find that safe container for our anger and rage, and then we are being asked to go within and see what gems of wisdom are contained within it. Where have we silenced ourselves instead of speaking our truth or speaking up? Where have we acted in a disempowered way, being allowed to be spoken down to, or staying in unhealthy situations? Or maybe we're ones who use our voice in loud ways to belittle to put down people or to get people, hey, I need to tell people how I really feel. And so the only way I know how to do that is to raise my voice in an angry way instead of seeking to listen and understanding. And then finally, when we take the time to have that gleam of wisdom of what it's here to teach us, what it's here to call us into, then we can become that alchemist. It is when that rage, that fiery energy can be turned into creative, active expression in our lives. We get to channel our fierce energy and benevolence for good, to not only empower ourselves, but others. And that's what it means to live in dominion, to be the master that we are here to be. And so I'd like to close with meditation. And in this meditation, I'm going to ask you to call up some anger, some fury, some hurt. And I ask you maybe not to pick the most deepest hurt, because, you know, we're here together for a short time, and I really would like you to be in support with somebody for something that is deeply, deeply traumatic. So if you can, I'm going to ask you to call to mind some form of anger or fury, something that you haven't expressed either. Either you expressed it by suppressing or vomiting and exploding. And I'm going to, you know, take you through a guided imagery a little bit. You know, I'm going to ask you to call up an image of your empowered self, an image of a light being that is there with you. And then in the releasing part, one of the sounds that Peter Levine speaks of is chanting the sound of Vu, okay? And it is like a foghorn. Vu. It's from that deep place where we can purse our lips. So I'll guide you through. I just wanted to let you know a little bit about where we're going. So I invite you to settle down in your chair. And as I adjust the music, I invite you to close your eyes. So I invite you to relax your body, bringing your awareness to your breath. Sensing your body from within. And breathing into those places within your body that is calling for some TLC. Allowing your breath to be deep and rhythmically slow. And with each breath, you allow all the muscles in your body to let go. Allowing yourself to be fully supported by your chair, your bed, your recliner, whatever is holding your body at this moment. And with each breath that you take, you allow yourself to become weightless. And in this place of relaxation, I invite you to bring your awareness to the top of your head. Where you sense a golden cord emanating from above. And I invite you to breathe it down, sensing it move through your spinal column as it lengthens and softens and relax your entire back. Sensing it move slowly down, 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 till it reaches the base of your spine. I'm getting a sense that it travels down from the base of your spine to Mother Earth. As you allow yourself to be divinely grounded here, sensing that cord into the ground, grounding you like the mighty oak tree. And beginning to breathe up that golden cord back up to the crown of your head as you sense the movement of heaven and earth within you, the dance of the divine and the sacred human. And in this place of groundedness, I invite you to bring your awareness to your heart. Sensing your breath flowing freely in and through your heart. As you breathe rhythmically in for the count of 4 and out for the count of 4. Allowing your heart to open. With each breath that you take, calling forth divine love, divine courage, now I invite you to center yourself in an image of you as divine master. Sensing yourself as the light that you are. Notice how you hold yourself as the divine master. Notice what you are wearing as an expression of your beauty and your power and magnificence. And now I invite you to call from beyond the veil someone to stand with you. Perhaps it's someone from the angelic realm, a divine master, or perhaps it's an image of Mother Earth, the strength of a mountain behind you, the boldness of the bright sun, or the mystery and power of the moon. Sensing the power and the safety surrounding you. And bringing your awareness back to your heart as you breathe deep and slow. As you call to mind something that is wanting healing. Anger, frustration, deep hurt that you have experienced at the hands of someone else's behavior. Continue to breathe into the emotions of anger, of rage, disdain, fear, knowing that you are surrounded by your own divinity and that which you have called forth from beyond. Notice where the emotions are felt within the body. Is it in a particular area or organ? Does it feel hot or warm or tight? Breathing into it all. Does it have a scent, a taste? Does it have a color? And if it could take a form, what would it look like? Now I invite you to emerge into a symbol of empowerment, of courage, of beauty. Perhaps it's an image of you transforming into the tiger like Valerie. Search the wisdom of the heart and allow, through the power of your imagination, to be the expression of empowerment, whatever symbol it takes. And allowing yourself in your empowered, symbolic state to absorb all the remnants of trapped pain and trauma and suffering. And now, in the privacy of your own home, I invite you to chant the sound of Vu, like a foghorn, deep, breathing in, Vu. Allowing your body to release whatever is wanting to be released. Breathing in. Vu. Sorry, sometimes when I do Reiki or meditation, I do coughing as release for me and for others. Breathing in and out. Vu. Continuing to chant. Feeling the energy settle within you. Allowing your breath to be deep and slow. And getting an image of you empowered, free, and unlimited. And in this place of power and clarity, as you breathe into your heart, you ask the wisdom of your heart. What gems of wisdom are being revealed to me through this anger, this rage, this hurt, this fear? Where am I being asked to speak? To step into my power more boldly, more creatively? And where am I willing to relinquish how I use anger and belittlement to keep people in line? Or to try to protect myself from feeling pain itself? And as you sit in the stillness, allow the voice to speak to you. As you ask, what is one small step I can take to express the fiery, most passionate, creative expression of me? Allow your heart to be filled with gratitude. For you are the alchemist. You are the light that is willing to step into the darkness and be transformed anew. Allow yourself to feel the zest and the fire of the truth of you, as courageous, as bold, as wise, as loving and compassionate, knowing that they all occupy your heart, your mind, and your soul. So let us take a deep breath in and out as you feel the energy and the vitality of you. Breathing in and breathing out, beginning to rub your legs. Feel the warmth between your hands as you rub them together. Begin to stretch your arms above your head. Smile, and when you are ready, open your eyes.